Tonight, we're going to get started, so if everyone could get in position. I'm going to go through a quick intro of myself, talk through some logistics, and then we'll get into our presentation. So my name is Joe St. Pierre. I'm with Crowley Wind Services. I was very fortunate to be born here in Salem. I spent a majority of my childhood fishing in the discharge canal of what used to be the coal-fired power plant, a majority. Hours upon hours. And so it's a super privilege of mine to be able to be here tonight and speak to you about the transition of that site and how it's going to really support the Commonwealth of Massachusetts goals and benefit our community. And so with that, a few housekeeping items. Interpretation services are available for this presentation. If anybody needs that in this room, please see the lovely lady in the back. And for those of us on Zoom, if you could just click the bar on the bottom right and select the language that best suits you. And here's my clicker. Also, same for closed captioning. If you require it, you please use the Zoom functions and the closed captioning functions and do what you need to do there. With respect to, at the end of the presentation, we're going to have a question and answer session. And for those of you who are in person, please there'll be a couple of people walking around with a microphone. Just make sure that you speak into the microphone when you ask the question. And for those who are joining us virtually, use the chat function. Yeah. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Graham Tyson, Vice President of Operations for Crowley Wind Services.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, no, that's not necessary. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. It really means a lot to have this level of community engagement. We had, I think, over 100 people at the gate when we opened it at 4 o'clock to show off the port. So it was really exciting for us to show off some of the work we've been doing that we're really proud of. Thank you all for coming out. I want to thank the mayor for his continuing support, who couldn't make it tonight, as well as Senators Lovely and Cruz, who also tried to make it, but they had a late session in the legislature tonight. Thanks to Dan Collins from the city and Bill McHugh, Harbor Master, for all your support on the project and for being here tonight. And thank you to Bruce Carlisle from the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. We'll tell you a bit later about how we're working together to make this a public-private partnership, but this wouldn't be possible without the support from the Mass CEC. And thank you to the North Shore Building Trades guys for coming out as well. We're excited to have you here and hopefully see you working on the port not very long from now. My name is Graham Tyson, Vice President of Operations at Crowley Wind Services. I just joined Crowley just a few months ago. Started out as an engineer in the Coast Guard, and that brought me up here to New England and the North Shore. I was stationed in Kittery and in Boston. I met a Massachusetts woman, and since then we've settled in here on the North Shore. I live in Georgetown, and I came over to Crowley, having worked in other areas of the offshore wind industry, largely because of the opportunity to be involved in this terminal and bringing this development and bringing this industry here to the North Shore of Massachusetts. I always wondered if I moved to the North Shore, would I ever get to do anything? Am I going to be driving to New Bedford all the time to be involved in offshore wind? And fortunately, this project's here, which I'm really glad to be a part of. Tonight, we're going to give you some updates on our project. We'll talk a little bit about the greater offshore wind industry, what's going on there, where Salem and Crowley and Avangrid fit in that picture. We'll give some more project-specific updates on permitting and construction timelines. We'll also talk through some of the landscaping and public access commitments that we've made. We can answer some questions about those. And then some of the community benefits, as well as talk through the operations that are going to be going on at the port, so everybody understands what the port is and what it isn't. We've got some nice pictures from the operations down there in New Bedford, so you can see a kind of a good example of what it's going to be like when things are up and running here. All right, I think that's the agenda for tonight. We'll get into our project summary. I'm doing the slides. So a little bit about Crowley. Crowley is a over 125-year-old family-owned company. Started with Mr. Tom Crowley doing rowboat services out to ships in San Francisco Bay. Since then, we've evolved to be one of the largest maritime and logistics companies in the United States. We own over 170 ships. We operate 19 terminals in North and Central America. The bulk of our business is moving products around the country by truck, by rail, by ship, and by terminals. We have some government services where we support the Navy and logistics, and we operate vessels for the military, like the gray ships that aren't actually the Navy. And we do a lot of logistics. Crowley's been always committed to being a leader and an innovating company. We've done stuff like launch the first all-electric tugs. And we saw the offshore wind industry developing about 4 or 5 years ago when Crowley really started getting involved. And we realized that it really is the future for our clean energy goals here in the United States. We've seen what they've done in Europe, and it's really impressive, the amount of energy that they're able to get from it, the positive impacts that they have on local communities, revitalizing old fishing villages there in England. There's some great stories from that. And we saw that Crowley wanted to be involved in this transition. So about 2 years ago, we fully opened a Crowley Wind Services business unit, which is what the project members, Joe and John and myself, are a part of here today. And that is the business that is developing this terminal for the offshore wind industry. We're working in several other areas. Right now, our tugs and barges are transporting the wind turbine components from New London out to an offshore project there. And we hope to be involved in lots of other areas of the industry and create these good paying both jobs on land and jobs at sea. We can skip over most of this, but you can see we've got these 5 different business units, wind services being one of them. The other areas are kind of our logistics and transportation businesses. So the offshore wind industry, why offshore wind, right? Well, we've got a lot of goals here, especially in the Northeast, to have power coming from renewable energy as we transition away from fossil fuels. Slowly, it's a gradual and cooperative transition. If you look at the way the Northeast is, right, there's obviously not very much room to put down lots of onshore wind and solar farms and nuclear plants. So we've looked to put those things offshore where we can build large amounts of power and bring them into high demand centers like Boston and New York and areas of Connecticut and Rhode Island. We're really blessed in the Northeast to have a really ideal, they've called it the Saudi Arabia of wind before, because we have a long, relatively shallow continental shelf, strong, consistent winds, infrastructure like this power plant, workforce, a history of maritime workforce in our area, and the desire and demand to bring that power ashore. So that's why New England is really an excellent place for it. Massachusetts has committed to procure 5.6 gigawatts of offshore wind power by 2027 and has goals to be 80% powered by renewable energy by 2050. Those goals cannot be met without offshore wind. Why Salem? Why are we here today? These offshore wind turbines are very large. They require ports to bring in the components from all over the world, right? So right now, many of these offshore wind components are manufactured in Europe because that's where the existing supply chain is. As the industry grows and matures, more and more of those things are going to be manufactured in the U.S. In New York, they just announced two major factories that are in the Hudson River area in New York. So we can expect that components will be coming in from those factories in the future, and more and more will be coming online. So we need to bring these components all into one place where they can be prepared to go offshore. If something costs $1 to do in the factory, it costs $10 to do that same job at the port. It costs $100 to do it offshore, and it costs about $1,000 to go back and fix it later. So the industry is motivated to make sure you get everything right at the port so that things go smoothly offshore. So that's what we're doing here, bringing in these components, preparing them to go offshore, making sure that offshore installation ship is always supplied with a ready set of wind turbine components so that we can do that offshore installation as efficiently as possible. So why Salem? First of all, we need more than one port to meet these goals. There's a similar facility in New Bedford. Unfortunately, it is small and it is restricted by the hurricane barrier that kind of decreases the number of wind turbines and the size of the wind farms you can support from it. So both this site and New Bedford are complementary and will be both required to support the offshore wind goals that Massachusetts has alone, not to mention the other support that we'll be able to provide to Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New York, and in future, New Hampshire and Maine as they advance their offshore wind plans as well. Salem has a deep water terminal, no restrictions on height, so we can bring in the ships that we need to bring in. And this great land, this 42 acres here around the power plant. Many of you know this used to be a coal power plant. I think it's pretty cool that we're taking what used to be a coal site, improved one step up to a clean natural gas plant, and now being used to support the offshore wind industry. So. That's kind of the intro of where we are and how we fit into the industry. We're supporting the offshore operations. There's not going to be any up and spinning wind turbines here at Salem. We are our logistics support location to the offshore wind developers, the people that will be installing, owning, and operating those turbines. So with that, I'll turn it over to John Barry, our Director of Terminal Operations, and he'll give some updates on the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great old picture of a T2 tanker at the old coal burning facility. And everybody that made it out there today for a visit, and it really did appreciate the interest, and we have appreciated the interest in this project all along. So we're currently going through some of the final permitting processes, and I'm sure a lot of the local community folks are understanding that we're going through the Conservation Commission and the local planning board to make sure we satisfy all of the local requirements. Once we have those permits in hand, we will be moving on to the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection permitting and also the coastal zone management permitting. And once those permits are in hand, we'll finish up with the federal permits, namely the national EPA permits and also some other permits from the federal government, including Army Corps of Engineers. That will be attached to some of the dredging. Joe, are you going to talk about this or am I talking about this? No, I'll talk about it. Apologies, we didn't have too much time to rehearse the show. We currently have an RFP, request for proposals, out in the market for construction of the facility. There's a small pre-qualified list of contractors that can actually do this work. They're reviewing that now. Those proposals are due back the end of this week. We would like to have that sort of negotiation and discussion and have a final award towards the end of this year with a construction start date in early of 2024. And I would like to point out, especially with a lot of support from the building trades, that this project will be done under a project labor agreement, PLA. You're welcome. I'm going to turn it over to Joe St. Pierre, who has been doing a great job here in Salem.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm just going to go through, we're going to look at some renderings of what the terminal will look like and just talk through the operations of it, how it's going to function. This is a rendering of what the terminal will look like. We're projecting once the construction is complete, shooting for sometime in 2026 for that as the schedule stands now. To go over, do I have a laser? Yeah. All right, so to go over the, I guess the basics of the site, we have to the left, we have laydown yard A. Coming over here, this is what we call the transition yard, and then laydown yard B. Additionally, this is the delivery berth, load out berth, and the pre-assembly area. Wind turbine generator components are essentially 3 different large components. They consist of the blades themselves. These blades are in a rack. You're looking longitudinally at them. This is a picture of them transversely. This here is the nacelle, and this section right here is the tower section. So this is what holds the nacelle and the blades up. This is an example of a load in. So think of the heavy lift ships coming from the manufacturing facilities and the components being delivered to the site. Example of marshalling, the term in the industry is called marshalling. Marshalling is essentially captured by a representative of sort of receiving, storage, pre-assembly, and then delivery, load out. So here we see in the background, of course, you see our site, an example of storage of nacelles in laydown yard B. Up here you can see the tower sections and the blade sections. And so the site in New Bedford, this marshalling activity is happening currently, and the sort of sub-picture here is a picture of the laydown yard in New Bedford. So pre-assembly and load out. So again, the load out happens after the pre-assembly and the storage of the components. The load out will be to these smaller barge type units. There'll be a crane on site. The crane will move the tower sections and the nacelles and blades onto the barge, and then the barge will deliver these components offshore. Again, a picture of New Bedford and what that operation looks like today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Greg Dolan.
Thanks, Jim. Good evening, everyone. I'm Greg Dolan. I'm with Avangrid Renewables. We're a partner with Crowley on this project, and that we're planning to be the first tenant here in Salem. With me tonight is Pat Johnson and Chris Hardy. So if you have questions at the end, we've got a full team here to support and give you guys answers. My focus, I'm the offshore wind ports manager, so my focus is very much on the ports themselves. And then Pat and Chris can talk a little bit more about Avangrid and our community initiatives and the overall benefits to the Commonwealth that's available through our developments. Just a quick history or a brief overview on Avangrid Renewables. So we are a subsidiary of the Iberdrola Group. Iberdrola has projects all across the world. Where we've got several projects that are in operation in Europe right now. Several projects that are in construction in Europe, and we've got several projects that are under development in Brazil, as well as Asia. You might be familiar with us here in the United States. Avangrid's the third largest operator of onshore wind projects nationally. We've also got approximately 9 gigawatts of renewable power in production in the U.S. We're across 24 states, and we also have a stake in the Vineyard Wind project. So we are a 50% joint venture owner of the Vineyard Wind project, which is in production right now, or in construction right now. The images that you saw in the previous slides that Joe was just showing you of the New Bedford Marine Commerce Terminal, those are wind turbines that are going out to our offshore wind farm. The lease area itself is essentially divided up into 3 sections. Vineyard Wind here to the north, and then what we call the Park City Wind Project in the middle of the lease area, and the Commonwealth Wind area, Commonwealth Wind Project to the south. the very end of the lease area. Vineyard Wind is about 15 miles off the coast of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. And then the interconnection cables run into Barnstable, Massachusetts. We do have another lease area further down the coast, off the coast of North Carolina, which is called Kitty Hawk Wind. It's approximately a 2,500 megawatt, or 2,500 megawatt project to the 3 gigawatt project, depending on when it gets developed and the size of the turbines that we're going to be using. Pat, if you want to come up here, I'll let you talk a little bit more about the jobs and the benefits to Massachusetts.
Yeah, thanks so much, Greg. Great to be with you all tonight. So just building off what Greg was speaking about here. So this just shows, I think, what's so exciting about these projects and both the combination of what Crowley's building here in Salem, and I think Greg and our whole team, we value Crowley so much as a great partner to our company and to these projects, and we're so glad that this port facility is moving forward here in Salem. So if you look at these projects combined, the job creation benefits are substantial, particularly for the great gentleman here from the North Shore Labor Council. Just like Crowley's project here will be with a PLA, all our offshore wind projects will have project labor agreements, as the Vineyard Wind 1 project does currently. So these are going to be long-term jobs, building these wind farms for years to come, hiring union labor here in Massachusetts. So just a couple statistics. If you look at our Massachusetts projects, once these are fully up and running, that's enough power for 1.1 million homes here in Massachusetts. It's a substantial part of our future power need that is really incredible. And obviously the benefit of these projects, in addition to job creation, is the greenhouse gas reduction and climate benefits are huge. Obviously the reason that our state leaders here in Massachusetts, past and present, are making this transition and have been pushing offshore wind, pushing solar, and other renewable energies, is so we can wean ourselves off of fossil fuels to power our homes. There's a push for more electrification, more electric cars, heat pumps, all great work that Bruce and his team at Mass CEC are helping lead the state on. But we can't do that without the power. And this just helps kind of quantify some of that climate benefit just from our Massachusetts projects. That's 3.2 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions avoided each year. And the more we get these wind farms up and running, that means, and maybe the next iteration or the next natural gas fired plant or oil fired plant here in Massachusetts can close its doors. Job creation, just some statistics. Obviously there's phases of these projects, very heavy in construction with union labor during the construction phase as we're marshaling the components and things are coming in here in Salem. We're bringing them out to be installed. That's significant union labor jobs during that time period. And then in the longer term, there's long-term jobs from these projects to go out and do the operations and maintenance phase of these projects to make sure that the turbines are being maintained in the years to come, and that any type of malfunctions or issues are prevented because there's ongoing regular maintenance with these projects. So this just shows, I think, a great statistic. For every $1 million invested in offshore wind farms, 2 full-time jobs are created here in Massachusetts. So these really are a job engine through this economic investment. And just some other statistics here as well from the projects. So just a little bit about the first Vineyard Wind project. And I want to give a shout out to the team from Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, our partner on that project, who are in the back as well. This is a joint venture project between Avangrid and CIP. Going to be the first commercial scale offshore wind farm in the United States. An 800 megawatt project. 2 companies who withstood delays during the former presidential administration that were very difficult to endure, and saw the project through with great leadership and help from President Biden and former Governor Baker and others, where this project is now in construction It's been so great for the teams from our two companies who are working on that project. As the first couple turbines are up, things are ready to go. First power from that project is going to start soon. There's significant work going on that project. That's going to be 62 turbines and going to be providing offshore wind power for years to come for Massachusetts residents, and hopefully be fully up and running next year. I think just a little bit about how an offshore wind farm works, but sometimes it's hard to think about, what's the Salem's role in this greater picture, and PI as part of this project. So just briefly on this. So obviously we're going to install wind turbines that are affixed to the bottom of the seafloor, far south of Martha's Vineyard, in federal waters. And these new generation of turbines are incredible in terms of the output you get from each one of them. Vineyard Wind is using turbines that produce 13 megawatts per turbine, and the next generation iteration of them are even going up. So you put the turbines up on towers that are fixed to the bottom of the seafloor. They have what you saw Joe show, the nacelle, that massive GE branded object that's at the top of the turbine, and then you have the blades attached to them. So that's all installed 1 mile apart for each turbine, so that marine and traffic and fisheries can operate through the wind farm area. Then there's cables, what are called inter-array cables, connecting each turbine out there, and then they all feed into an offshore substation, which looks like a massive platform, almost like what you think of a oil platform out in the Gulf of Mexico, with a very large substation on it. And the Vineyard Wind 1 substation has been up for quite a bit of time, and that offshore substation receives all the power from those wind turbines in each project, filters it to the appropriate amount of kilovolts, to then have the power exported on cables underneath the seafloor, in the case of our projects, to locations in the town of Barnstable on Cape Cod. And that those cables are buried beneath the seafloor in environmentally sensitive manner, to then bring the power to land. And then from there, plugs into the electric grid, and all these projects then, the benefits and the power proceeds and is out to the rest of Massachusetts from those locations on Cape Cod. I think just so you have a sense of this, of how massive and what we call the scopes or packages for each of these projects. So you have the actual selection of a wind turbine manufacturer or generator. In the case of Vineyard Wind, that's General Electric. You have the foundations that you see in yellow there, that the towers and the turbines themselves rest on top of. The array cables that connect each of the turbines together, the offshore export cable that takes all the power from the offshore substation into shore. There's a little bit of a visual of what that offshore substation looks like. We then need to build an onshore substation, in this case for these projects in Barnstable, that further filters the power to the requirements of Eversource and National Grid. And then you see as well in the far right image, the onshore export cables, which proceed under roadways in Barnstable to bring the power to that substation. This is a long period. The permitting on these projects takes a long time. It takes a lot of investment for companies in this business to build wind farms. So this just gives you a sense. These are 10+ year projects from the start of an acquisition of a lease area or the start of the process, to development, getting a power purchase agreement, and then the construction of the project. This is a very long endeavor to complete. So I'll stop there and turn it back over to Crowley. Thank you.
Okay, so benefits and engagement in the community. So this is obviously a terrific economic engine for Salem and the larger North Shore. With respect to Salem, we do have a tax agreement with the city. We are working through currently a community benefits agreement. Some of the numbers around construction that we're looking at with respect to job opportunities is somewhere to the tune of 150 jobs during construction. About 8 of those direct to Crowley, and 20 or 30 or so during the busy periods. With respect to career training and workforce development, we've engaged with Salem High School and their CTE department. We're happy to sit on a couple of the advisory boards for a few different programs of theirs, and also Essex Tech, same sort of relationship. Sitting on a few advisory boards and really looking to expand upon that in the coming months. With community development, I'm going to show some pictures here of how we're improving the site to increase access to the community, increase access to the waterfront for the community. We have added a Derby connector, is what we're calling it, a connection between Derby Street and Blaney Street that I think will be really nice for the community. And finally, the really nice part of this project is it marries the designated port area and is sort of consistent with it is consistent with the city's harbor master plan. So with that, this is a rendering of what we think the site will look like from Derby Street, of course, sort of looking, I guess that would be westerly from Derby Street. An example of what we're trying to accomplish with respect to the plantings. This is right along Blaney Street. You can see the parking lot that we were all, most of us were sort of standing on a few hours ago, trying to match the existing landscaping to create a pleasant backdrop. This is the point access area. Location, if you will. It's sort of on it mimics the path that we walked into the site today. This rendering obviously shows more robust landscaping and design. This is the gate. This is near the gate where we entered today. Next slide shows, just a bit further. Oh no, this slide is actually from the terminal, the current terminal building on Blaney Street. It really gives a good vantage of what that access will look like, and really nice vantage point of the operations that we're going to be having in the port. And with that, I want to thank everyone for coming, and we're happy to take some questions here. And yeah, thank you. Yeah, correct. So just a quick reminder, if you do have a question online, please use the chat function. And if you're in the room, please focus your attention to someone with the microphones and speak into the microphone. Yep.
Hi, everybody. Hi, my name is Jim Rose. I live here in Salem. And there was an article on the front page of today's Boston Globe about the town of Barnstable. And there were some objections about the cabling going underneath the beach. Now, how is that going to... Can you just comment on that and how that could impact the timeline here?
Sure. Yeah, that's. I'm glad you asked about that. I spend most of my time in Barnstable. That's my normal beat. So the town of Barnstable has been a fantastic partner to our company and to the Vineyard Wind project team over the years. I think in the last couple months, there's been a rise of some folks who have some questions and concerns that was expressed in that article. I think everything that's being asked and some of those concerns are things that we can work out, address, and mitigate. We have a fantastic relationship with that town and with their leadership and elected leadership. And so I think, we're just going to continue on that partnership. We have signed host community agreements for 2 of the 3 projects with the town. And I think we have really solid plans, but honestly, a big part of my focus and our teams is listening to that community, I meet frequently with some of those folks who are airing their concerns and addressing those to make sure that, that folks feel comfortable with what we're doing and some of the locations, particularly the 3rd project landing location that we're proposing within that town. So I don't anticipate delays. I think we're just going to be doing really robust community engagement, similar to what Crowley's doing here tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Than
And I just want to clarify, from our side, that the Salem Windport and Crowley's development here, although Avangrid is our first tenant, is not tied to any one particular project. So the fate of any one particular project doesn't affect this terminal. We're proceeding with the development of this terminal as an asset to support the entire industry. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Hi, Bill McCarthy, Marblehead. So there's a facility in Fairhaven, is that correct, that supports the offshore farms off of the vineyard, is that correct?
There's a facility at New Bedford Marine Commerce Terminal.
Okay, South Shore, somewhere, there's a facility. Is it similar to the one that's being installed here?
Yes, very similar.
So why do you need a second one? That's my question. And
Yeah, I'll talk about that. So there's multiple projects that are going to be building at the same time. Each project can take 2 to 3 years to build, depending on what jobs are performed in which place. And the number of projects that are going to be built in greater New England requires at least 2 terminals to support that capacity.
so is there plans for wind farms offshore in this region, New Hampshire, the North Shore, Maine?
Right now, all of the active lease areas and planned wind farms are south of the Cape, but the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management does have a planning area offshore in the Gulf of Maine, which is being evaluated for future offshore wind leasing.
I've got one more question. Sure. New Jersey had Ormsted 2 weeks ago pull out of their offshore wind farm business. What makes you different from what transpired down there?
Yeah, the offshore wind industry has definitely suffered a lot from the impacts of kind of global macroeconomics over the past 3 years, rising interest rate, a global rise in offshore wind, which has created a bit of a supply chain bottleneck, and general inflation and other issues. Offshore wind is a very capital-intensive industry. You build it once, and all your money goes up front. So a lot of the projects which had agreements which kind of predated COVID and the war in Ukraine and the big increases of inflation have challenging economics. But the industry is adapting to that. There's new auctions. New York just awarded 3 new projects that are going to be built by 2030. Massachusetts is also doing new auctions, and these will be I think the industry's had a lot of lessons learned about how to structure these contracts and make them more sustainable to build a domestic supply chain that's going to be here and last. So there's, individual projects have had troubles, and there may be some, puffs and lulls, some busy periods and some quieter periods. But I think the end result is going to be that there will be a lot of growth in this industry, especially towards the end of the decade, and plenty of work to do here in Salem.
I would also note that Ørsted is on their track, and they're a developer, and we're Crowley, and Crowley is a company that's used to working on very difficult things, and we're here for the long haul. From Outback, please.
Hey guys, so I'm with part of the building trades. I'm part of DC 35, and being from the neighborhood, I was here around 4 o'clock when you brought everybody out to show the area. The possibilities seem endless, and looking at all the information, it sounds like it's great for the community. That being said, being part of DC 35, what we do is, part of it is the industrial painting. And some of the information that was presented was you guys plan on using us, our union members, to help build it. Now, being part of the community, after this project is built, do you guys plan on keeping our union members working and helping create careers instead of jobs with our members, and basically go from there?
Yeah, Greg, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think this is actually a good team up here right now to address it. So Crowley's vision for the port is long term, right? So they've got basically a 25-year, I think, lease for the operations of the facility. And their model is to essentially, have short-term lessees who are actually building the wind farms. So Crowley's already committed to a PLA to engage with the construction trades for the construction of the facility. But following that, Avangrid, as a developer of wind farms, is also going to be signing up a PLA to use organized labor on its projects. Following our lease of the facility, after we've constructed both the Park City Wind and the Commonwealth Wind project, Vineyard Offshore, Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners is going to come in, and they will start using the facility then. So although there will be a transition of customers as over time, each subsequent project is going to be using the skilled labor force that the project before has worked with. And so although we talk about these things as having a relatively short timeline, they are successive projects that build on each other. So this isn't a short-term just simple infrastructure partner. This has life and benefits to the community far into the future.
So Crowley, we may not be employing these building trades workers as we go into the future. That'll be through the tenants. We are committed to helping build out those skills and career sets as part of our community benefits. We're working with Salem High School, the vocational school, Essex Tech, and having partnerships for workforce development. So we hope to be kind of a glue and a consistent facilitator of those jobs, even ones that may not directly work for us. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Marie Brescher. I live here in Salem also. And,
Could you just repeat it? The microphone.
my name is Marie Brescher. I live here in Salem also. And my question is a namby-pamby one by comparison to all these other heavy lifting ones. But, when you talked about the Derby connector, the footprint path now does not go all the way to the water. It stops maybe 300 yards before we get to the actual water. I'm not sure if the power plant and if that project works together in terms of, is there a possibility to put down the fence and build it out to the water with a bench or so, so we could sit and enjoy the water from there as well?
Yeah, I think there's the point access. We're on the southwest corner where you'll be able to enjoy the water, but we don't anticipate having a path onto it because it is a secure Coast Guard controlled port facility.
Okay, but the walk from the power plant, it does not have anything to do with that.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so the existing walk will still be there.
Yeah, I was actually going to.
But it won't go to the water.
No, unfortunately. Bill can probably speak to the harbor master here in Salem, can speak to some of the Coast Guard.
Thank you.
Good evening, Bill McHugh, harbor master for the city, as well as port director and facility security officer. So after the tragic events of 9/11, there was a enactment of the Maritime Transportation and Security Act, MTSA, and that sets security regulations on ports and access. So one of the things in a designated port area that's acceptable is point access. So that area to the north, which runs along the power station as a park, that will still be accessible, but it won't be possible to put that down to the water. So that's why, and I got to thank Crowley for their partnership. We've had some long, hard conversations. Joe St. Pierre is the facility security officer for Crowley. They just recently got their plan. The city in partnership will have intermittent plans, which we had with the power station. That's how we hosted the cruise ships. That's actually how all the international flag vessels to date that you've seen came in under the city's plan. So moving forward, one of the things that was important to the city was the Derby Street connector, which I call the Harbor Walk extension, which allows some sort of organized path, not putting you on the street on Derby Street, to get around to Blaney Street and take advantage of what I consider a real attractive point access on the Blaney Street side. And working with Joe and the Crowley team, I think we've come up with a schedule, if you will, that, you know, it can be open to the maximum amount possible and still stay in compliance with MTSA regulations. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we're going to take a question online.
Hi, this is from Tom online. Yes, I understand there's already approval for the marshalling field to operate 24/7. As an abutter, what can we expect in terms of overnight activity, specifically around machinery, vehicles, lights, noise, etc.?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, this facility is going to be supporting offshore operations, right? We need to make sure that the guys and gals that are out there have the equipment that they need when they need it. So that will encompass during times of busy periods, operating 24/7, potentially loading in from ships, loading out from ships, and some of the crane work on the harbor front. We are going through both a lighting plan and a noise plan with the planning board, and we will be complying with the regulations brought forward there. From a practical perspective, what's on the site, there'll be cranes and other equipment, which currently many of those are run by diesel generators. There are opportunities to electrify those in the future as technology improves. They also have quieting systems, mufflers, and ways to reduce those noises. And there'll be, of course, there'll be the landscaping barrier to help mitigate a lot of those noises. Things like backup alarms and beeps and stuff on cranes. There's technologies to make those alarms quieter and localized to the site so that they're not penetrating. You shouldn't be hearing those items. Most of the work that we're doing is things like lifting and bolting and mechanical work. None of it's particularly loud. So we'll be complying with those noise ordinances and doing our best to be good neighbors. The lighting plan that we have, we'll have some shielding to make sure that the light's not projecting beyond the perimeter, and we'll be turning off lights that aren't in active work areas. So when things are sitting in the storage yard, we're not going to be wasting electricity or bothering the neighbors with unnecessary light. But if workers need to get equipment out of that yard, then the lights will come on. But we're working with the planning board and having a third-party review of our lighting plan to ensure that it's done with best possible practices. Thank you. The young lady here in the sweatshirt.
Thank you. If a wind turbine were to leak oil, would the water become toxic to the sea life and us?
No, so we'll have, there's containment systems in place, both on the turbines and in the port, to contain any hazardous materials. So here at the site, we follow lots of regulations and industry best practices to ensure that if there were some kind of leak, it would be contained.
Thank you, Virginia Caivano, Salem. Could you explain how you're going to compress and prepare the site before you bring in all of the heavy equipment? In other words, will you be pounding it? And also, as a second question, same thing, is how do you handle what is now a big field with a lot of water absorption? We have quite frequently some flooding over in that area and heavy rains. So if it becomes impermeable, it's just going to back up into the city.
Sure. I'm not the engineer on the program, but I work very closely with the engineering team. So I'll answer the second part first. With respect to the stormwater or rainwater, we've just gone through a total redesign of the stormwater plan in order to meet all of the regulatory compliance. So that is actually exceeding all of the requirements. So that's how we're actually going to try to improve that facility in that respect. With respect to the ground improvement to withstand the capacities, there's a couple of things that are going to happen. One of them is going to be pile driving that will have to happen down towards the quayside area, which will improve the ground bearing capacity. But also in the backland areas, there'll be what they call surcharging, which will take material, put excessive amount of material. It'll be sort of built up, and then that that material will get graded down. The entire site is going to be raised approximately 2 feet, and that's also to help with sustainability and flood events. So this whole area is going to be sort of treated with this, what they call dense grade aggregate. So hopefully that answers your question. Thanks.
Hi. Hi, Cindy Jerslow, resident of Salem. I was just, if you thought about moving the blades more towards the sewage plant area and that 5 acres over there, so it wouldn't be so close to the neighborhoods? Have you thought of that in the planning?
We have, and one of the reasons why we've sort of selected the design as it sits is because the ground bearing capacity over near the sewer plant actually is a little stronger just naturally because of the bedrock being closer and because of the weight of the nacelles and also some of the electrical support that has to be put in place. It sort of lends it to be the way it is set. Again, I think that some of the drawings are probably a little bit dramatic maybe because I think that it tries to show it in the worst possible light, so to speak. But I think one of the things that I've recommended to people is to, take a ride down to New Bedford, great place to visit. And I think that you'll be pretty surprised at the way the facility is laid out. And it's not necessarily as imposing as I think most people would feel that it could be. So it's a great opportunity to do that. Hopefully that answers your question. Yep, thanks.
Hi, my name is Erica, and I live a block down here on Derby Street. When the coal plant, you mentioned pile driving and raising the space. When the coal plant was being dismantled, a lot of the properties here, our building in particular too, experienced a lot of foundation damage. So that was actually reimbursed by the insurance company for footprint. So do you have a plan in place for that? What's the, I guess the aftershock that would be happening? And then my other question is how you plan on handling the traffic flow, the increase of the trucks, and because the streets here are just too small for big trucks to come down the street.
Yes, yeah. I'll take the second one first. I'm building up a record of answering the second question first because I can remember it. But as far as the construction traffic plan, that's being actually worked out with the planning board, and that one. And I think that that plan is still being sort of cleaned up. Once we have the traffic routes in place, I mentioned it down on the dock today. We'll put that up on our website, SalemOffshoreWind.com, for everybody to see. And this is it's a great question. I know that I think we spoke at an earlier meeting. This is something that we're also going to work with the contractor once it's selected to put a program in place that will, basically mimic a similar program. And from other projects that I've been involved with on the waterfront, that's a pretty standard procedure to put some, basically sensors that will monitor what kind of activity we're creating, and we'll also be engaging probably with some of the abutters to make sure that we are not doing any damage. So that's all in a part of our plan. Hopefully that answers your question. Yes. That was 2. I wrote them down. Somebody else? Online? Sorry.
All right, we actually have a comment and then a question, so we're going to do a double header here. This is from Killian, who says, not a question, but as a Salem resident, I would appreciate this comment be voiced. The ambitious deployment of offshore wind energy is critical is a critical component of U.S. efforts to combat this climate crisis and build a clean energy economy. I fully support the town of Salem engaging in this clean energy initiative that would also provide real benefits to the local economy. The presentation tonight provided many compelling reasons why a partnership between Salem and the offshore wind industry would be mutually beneficial. Now we have a question from Raquel Frisch. For the members of this community directly impacted by the operations of the facility, i.e. noise, light, pollution, etc., what can we expect on a day-to-day basis when fully operational? Also, who can we directly speak to as issues arise? And they will, having lived through the construction of the power plant.
I'll answer the second one first. It's going to be Joe St. Pierre. And, you know, we again, and just for everybody's information, again, the SalemOffshoreWind.com website also has a direct link. So questions that might come up after this presentation, please feel free to submit them there. They come directly to myself and Joe and Crystal on our team, so we've got a bunch of people answering those. As far as what it's going to look like, I think that people are going to be pleasantly surprised. I think that this type of work is going to work well in the community. There's going to be a lot of effort to keep all the noise and the activity as far as any light pollution. We're going to be monitoring the emissions of the vessels and all of the activity at the facility. So we're really going to be, you know, taking all of these things under advisement as we build out the program. I think it should be noted that this equipment is very expensive, very heavy equipment. It moves very, very slowly and with a lot of care. So I think that people are going to be very pleasantly surprised at the activity at the port because it's going to be world-class in a very professional run operation. Hopefully that answers the question.
Hi, I'm with the North Shore Building Trades, and as a business rep for the Painters and Allied Trades, I represent around 4,500 members. A good size of that membership actually lives in the city of Salem. So they've asked me to come out here today and speak on behalf of the project. We got a lot of members in the city that are looking forward to working on this project, people that grew up, were born and raised here, but then due to where the work was, had to leave their home city to go find gainful employment. So one thing that, you know, we've heard a bunch of questions from the community tonight. A big, great thing that you guys have done is you focus a lot more on careers than just jobs, right? So the difference between a job and a career is that a career at one point has an end. This is gainful employment in the city where these people live. On top of that, we had questions out here today that I just wanted to touch on. You know, someone asked what the difference is between this outfit up here and ones that have failed in the past. And I could say from experience, from the level of attention to detail that this body up here has given to our members that live in the city and the citizens of the city, it's really been second to none. So on behalf of our membership, I just want to thank you guys for really taking the community into consideration.
No, thank you very much. You know, and I don't think it just applies to the building trades. We, you know, again, this is something that I heard from the very beginning, that we were to, you know, do our best to become a member of the community, and so respectfully request to be a part of the community and really appreciate these opportunities to hear these concerns, because it helps us to try to mitigate those concerns and try to build a facility that, you know, again, everybody can be, you know, proud of. Thanks for your support.
I think you know, we all want to be out of here by 8 and clear it out. So in the interest of time, I think we'll take one more question. But as John said, the info@SalemOffshoreWind.com email comes directly to the project team, and we're down at the site most days. So please reach out if you want to engage more. With that, just one more question. Anybody have one? I think back there. Have your hand up. Thank you.
She's deferring.
Nice.
Just a question for you. We take you at your word in good faith that you're working towards full port electrification as technology allows and as and National Grid allows. But we're concerned with respect to, you know, this is an environmental justice neighborhood, that area. They've dealt with a lot of issues and environmental pollutions and pollutants associated with the plants in the past. Have you guys thought about any sort of incremental projects that could be done in the interim and possibly offsets to mitigate the fact that there will be diesel-powered vessels working there for maybe another decade before we get this fully electrified? So we'd really love to hear about how you're thinking positively about how to mitigate those impacts to the neighborhood.
Absolutely. So we are starting with electrification to be able to have the shore power capacity to run smaller ships. So when you saw the renderings of a tug and a barge, we should be able to power those tugs on electrical power. We'll have that capability when the port's delivered in 2026. Also, some of the cranes and the other equipment will have the power capacity there to be able to run it. We're also investing in the conduits and the kind of the space and the weight allowances to be able to install additional electrical capacity as it is available later. We're also in discussion with the city about a community benefits agreement and ways that we can contribute to climate resiliency and economically disadvantaged communities, environmental justice communities. So there's ways we can work with that. We've made some job-related commitments to cooperate with that particular area as well. All right. That's it. I thank you all for coming out. It's really great to see you. Thank you. Have a great night.